Welcome back to Left, Labor Education for Today. This week we have 3 stories for our 3rd edition of the weekly recap. I want to talk a little bit about UPS, but I'm going to save that for the end, so let's jump into our first story of the day. Our first story hits near and dear to my heart because it involves a college town Starbucks at my alma mater, Cornell University, a Starbucks location that I went to many times now, over 10 years ago. On July 6th of this week, an administrative law judge named Arthur Archan ruled in favor of Starbucks Workers United on a host of unfair labor practice charges emanating from 3 Ithaca, New York area Starbucks stores. All 3 stores had voted in favor of union representation by April of 2022. And remember, that was pretty early on in the organizing wave that took Starbucks from 0 unionized stores in the US in December of 2021 all the way up to over 300 unionized stores today. Among the unfair labor practice charges filed by Starbucks Workers United against Starbucks were all the usual suspects. So threats about a loss of benefits resulting from organizing activity, promises that benefits or pay or working conditions would be improved if workers were to refrain from organizing, and also the perception that Starbucks was increasing its surveillance of union organizing activity at these 3 Ithaca, New York area Starbucks locations. The charges also allege retaliation for pro-union activity, including escalation of discipline or enforcement of policies that had not been consistent at these locations prior to the organizing activity, denied promotions, as well as denied leave requests. And most importantly, which I want to make the topic of this video, the allegation that Starbucks closed its College Avenue Starbucks location in Ithaca, New York, as a result of this union organizing activity. On June 3rd, Starbucks notified the employees of the College Avenue store that it would be permanently closing that location as of June 10th, 2022. The workers, represented by Starbucks Workers United, requested to bargain over the decision to close that location. However, Starbucks denied that request and instead offered to engage in what's called effects bargaining, where those employees could negotiate with Starbucks about the impacts of that store closure. And the results of that effects bargaining included an agreement for employees at the College Avenue store to have a first right of refusal for transfer to either of the other 2 Starbucks locations in Ithaca, New York. It also included limited rights to be rehired should the College Avenue store open up at some point in the future. For Starbucks, the decision to close the College Avenue store allegedly came down to a few factors. One, there was insufficient and unreliable staffing of that location. It had always been a poorly run store in their testimony. It had infrastructure issues such as a grease trap that had been an issue and an eyesore, as well as a sanitation issue for several years. Also, electrical outlets that weren't working, as well as insufficient storage space and an inconveniently located ice bin. These were all problems that Starbucks says contributed to their decision to close that College Avenue location. However, Starbucks workers, represented by Starbucks Workers United, said it wasn't necessary to permanently close that location, and that Starbucks only pitched this as a permanent closure in order to create a chilling effect on the rest of the Starbucks locations across the country who were in the process of considering union organizing. In his decision, Judge Amchan ruled in favor of the union, saying, "Respondent has not shown that it has permanently closed the store or that it will do so absent its animus toward the pro-union employees who worked there. I conclude that the decision to close the store permanently, if indeed such a decision has been made, was motivated in part by the employees' union activity, including the strike over the leaking grease trap." Referring to a few weeks prior to the decision to close the store, workers at this location in College Avenue decided to engage in a strike because this grease trap that had been at that location for several years was an unacceptable working condition, which was kind of agreed to by all parties, including Starbucks management. As part of Amchan's remedy order, Starbucks has to reopen the College Avenue store and also pay back pay to all terminated employees of that location. In addition, if Starbucks wants to close that store at some point in the future, it has to engage in decision bargaining with Starbucks Workers United about that particular location. In his decision, Amchan references the Textile Workers of America versus Darlington Manufacturing Company, a case from 1965, where the court held that a business had the right to close all of its operations, even if that closure was related to union animus, but it did not have the right to close part of its operations if that closure had a foreseeable chilling effect on the rest of operations as it relates to union organizing. In Amchan's opinion, there was a clear and foreseeable chilling effect created by Starbucks' decision to close the College Avenue store, knowing that many of the 9,000 additional Starbucks stores were in consideration for forming a union at that exact same time frame. In his opinion, Amcham writes, "Given the widespread publicity given to union organizing at Starbucks stores and Starbucks' response, employees at the 9,000 plus Starbucks can only assume that they are risking their livelihood by organizing when they learn that Starbucks closed a store like College Avenue and got rid of almost all its employees either before or after the store closed." Starbucks has expressed an intent to appeal this decision, and in the meantime, Starbucks has also announced the closure of the additional 2 Ithaca, New York area Starbucks stores, leaving none of the Ithaca, New York Starbucks stores open as of May 2023. And of course, this decision has prompted additional unfair labor practice charges from Starbucks Workers United, as well as a request for injunctive relief. And it'll be really interesting to follow this story if and when Starbucks decides to reopen this business against its will per the order of the National Labor Relations Board. What is this store going to look like? What are the employees going to be treated like? How are the customers going to be treated? It'll be a really interesting story to follow, and I'll be sure to keep you posted as we get additional updates. In our next story, one of the biggest unions in the country takes on one of the biggest companies in the country, as the International Brotherhood of Teamsters extends its picket line across state lines in continuation of an unfair labor practice strike against Amazon. The strike began amongst delivery and dispatch workers based in Palmdale, California, but quickly spread to 3 additional locations in California before then spreading across state lines to Amazon facilities in New Jersey, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. The strikers are speaking out against alleged unfair labor practices by Amazon, including the termination of 84 Palmdale, California-based employees on June 24th. But an important question to ask is, who are these strikers? And the answer to that really comes down to who you ask. If you ask the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, these are Amazon delivery drivers and dispatchers providing logistics services to the preeminent e-commerce giant in the country. And if you ask Amazon, these are independent contractors and employees of a DSP, or a delivery service provider, a company that had been contracted to perform delivery services for Amazon, but not people directly employed by Amazon. In April of 2023, the Teamsters successfully organized a group of 84 employees based in Palmdale, California, who worked for a company called Battle Tested Strategies. And Battle Tested Strategies had been contracted by Amazon to provide delivery and dispatching services. At the time, Battle Tested Strategies voluntarily recognized the Teamsters without the need for an additional union election, and even engaged in collective bargaining over a first contract. But Amazon says that they had already made their decision to terminate the contract with Battle Tested Strategies by the time the Teamsters got involved. And Amazon spokesperson Eileen Hards says, "While we respect everyone's right to express their opinions, the facts here are being intentionally misrepresented by the Teamsters and BTLT. This company has a history of underperformance and not providing a safe environment, and was notified that Amazon was ending their contract before the Teamsters got involved to try and rewrite the facts." In a corresponding unfair labor practice charge filed by the Teamsters back in May, they allege, although these drivers wear Amazon uniforms, drive Amazon trucks, identify themselves as Amazon employees, are continuously monitored and surveilled by Amazon managers, and receive their work assignments from Amazon, Amazon has attempted to legally separate itself from these employees through a sham delivery service partner, or DSP, structure. In the repeated press releases put out by the Teamsters in recent days related to the recent strikes, they don't make any reference to Battle Tested Strategies, or to the possibility that these employees work for Battle Tested Strategies and could be jointly employed by Amazon as well. Instead, they frame these as Amazon strikes and Amazon employees striking over Amazon-related policies and working conditions. However, in the unfair labor practice charge, you can see more clearly that the Teamster strategy is revolving around the idea of these battle-tested strategy employees also being jointly employed by Amazon. And so it'll be really interesting to follow this story over the next few months, because the National Labor Relations Board has already telegraphed that they will be updating the joint employer standard potentially as soon as August 2023, meaning that Right now, it's possible that these employees are not jointly employed by Amazon. However, the exact same set of circumstances for the exact same group of employees could potentially yield a different result if the standard becomes less employer-friendly later on in 2023. And that takes us to our final story of the week, UPS. Every week I talk about UPS, and every week there's more drama. It's an interesting transition from our last story because the Teamsters continue to make no apologies about their intention of squeezing UPS, not only for the benefit of hardworking UPS employees, but also to attract these non-union employees from companies like Amazon. And so it seems the Teamsters are taking sort of a bilateral approach by actively campaigning across Amazon facilities, as we talked about in our last story, but also trying to get the best deal possible from these UPS negotiations. After last week's weekly recap, UPS and the Teamsters reconvened for a marathon session of negotiations all throughout July 4th holiday weekend, taking them right up until July 5th, the date that the Teamsters had imposed as the deadline for a tentative agreement to be reached in order that it could be pitched to their members for a ratification vote by the July 31st contract expiration date. And it looked like the parties were making a lot of progress. They had confirmed Martin Luther King Jr. Day as an official company holiday. The Teamsters say that work rules had been agreed upon that would prevent full-time employees from being forced to work overtime on their regular days off. Yet somehow, the parties were not able to get that ball across the goal line, and after a full deal was not agreed upon on July 5th, negotiations collapsed. In a statement released by UPS on July 7th, they say the Teamsters stopped negotiating this week despite strong proposals from the company that build on our industry-leading pay and benefits for our full-time and part-time employees. We have encouraged the Teamsters to return to the table to continue building on the significant progress we have made, including the recent completion of all local supplements. Just over 3 weeks remain until the current contract expires August 1st. Refusing to negotiate, especially when the finish line is in sight, creates significant unease among employees and customers and threatens to disrupt the U.S. economy. We are proud of the proposals we have put forward that deliver wins for our people. And so instead of returning to the table, the Teamsters appear to be engaging in additional practice picketing in anticipation of that strike that would commence on August 1st. However, at the same time, Teamster General President Sean O'Brien says that it was UPS that walked away from the table.
After marathon sessions, UPS negotiations collapsed. You're right, around 4 a.m., UPS walked away from the bargaining table after presenting an unacceptable offer to the Teamsters that did not address members' needs. UPS spoke with Bloomberg about this and says, "We have not walked away, and the union has a responsibility to remain at the table." When will you talk next?
Whenever they pick up the phone and call us. I mean, their story is compelling but highly inaccurate.
It appears that the final sticking point comes down to disagreements between UPS and the Teamsters about the appropriate rate of pay for part-time UPS employees. Take a look.
But when it came down to part-timers, I'll tell you what, if they're saying that part-timers make $5 less than $39 an hour, I'll sign that deal right now. That's not true. Our average part-timer is making starting wage rates about $16.50 per hour. It's up to UPS to make this right, and they should tell the real story.
Okay, so you said you would sign a deal at $5 less per hour. Is that your bare minimum? What's the line here for
Well, if they were going to pay $35 an hour for a part-timer, I definitely would do that. That's what they're saying. That's not the truth.
Usually when you see disagreements of this nature between the company and the union, the truth falls somewhere in the middle. But one thing that we do know for sure is that the impacts of a strike of 340,000 unionized UPS employees would have significant ramifications. We know that it would have significant impacts on UPS. We know that it would have significant impacts on the employees of UPS, but it also would have significant impacts on the U.S. economy, which could lead the government, including President Biden, to getting involved prior to that July 31st contract expiration date. That's it for the weekly recap. If you have any feedback on this week's edition, please feel free to drop a comment. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.